Week 5, it feels crazy to say that, of the NFL season here, joined by our Bills insider, Vic Carucci. We got Bills, Jaguars on deck this Sunday. What's different about this game is that they're going across the pond to play this one in the UK. One guy, Vic, that has joined the Bills in practice this week, Von Miller, the much-awaited return of the Bills' star pass rusher. Report today from Ian Rappaport on Thursday that he's traveling to London with the team. In the context of Greg Rousseau's foot injury that's kept him out of the first 2 days of practice, how do you view the situation with the Bills' pass rushers? And is there a window, and is it smart for Von Miller to maybe get some playing time against the Jaguars Sunday?
This is going to be interesting to monitor with Greg Rousseau's foot injury coming up and now putting him in a position where potentially he wouldn't play in the game. And the timing of it with Von Miller entering the practice window obviously is a good thing from the standpoint that the Bills could replace Rousseau conceivably with Miller. But I'm not so sure that this would be the time to put Miller out there. And he has been limited in practice. I don't think the Bills want to rush him back in any way. I think the thought all along has been to have Miller available in the latter portion of the season, frankly, mid to later portion of the season, when they can really turn things up with a pass rush that has been strong. And that's the other thing. The pass rush has functioned so well without him, and I think they wanted to continue on that course. But the Greg Rousseau injury could very well change things.
And Miller spoke to that extent on Wednesday, kind of saying that, hey, he'd like to get out there as soon as possible, but that he wants to play it smart, and whatever the team decides is correct, that he's kind of cool with that. So do you think that kind of takes some of the pressure off rushing him back for a game like Sunday?
I think you have two things at work here. You have certainly the thought that putting him out there too soon could cause something, an aggravation or any sort of setback, and that would be the worst scenario, right? Now you possibly knock him out for all of this season rather than part of it. But the flip side is having someone who can step in if desperately needed, and that's a strange thing to say about Von Miller, but if Greg Rousseau isn't playing in terms of the pass rush, you do need someone, and if the feeling is that Miller's health is close enough to where he can get out there, that might be a deciding factor. But if I'm the Bills, I stay true to the idea that you don't want to force him out too soon. That even if you have to sacrifice going without Rousseau and Miller for this game and just count on others to continue to play well, count on your whole defense to do its job, that might be the best course.
One other thing at work here, and we don't know necessarily to what extent, but it's not a normal week for the Bills. You know, the trip to London in and of itself adds a different wrinkle to this. Just with the logistics of going overseas to play this game, what sort of challenges does that present for the Bills ahead of this game against the Jags?
I'm really curious to see how this all goes, just in terms of what Bills team shows up from a physical standpoint. Are they going to be at all lethargic? It's a big time change. Number one, jet lag could be a significant thing. But what's really fascinating is that this Bills team under Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, they're following the guidance of sports science to a great extent. Unlike really the last time the Bills traveled to London, which was in 2015, and that was when Rex Ryan was the head coach. The Bills did not have as sophisticated a sports science setup as they do now. They've really invested and built into that. And through the years, there has been much more knowledge gained and much more of a best practice approach that teams throughout the NFL have taken when it comes to things like this, traveling overseas and what's the best time to go. So choosing to go as late as possible in the week is one thing that's different from what they did before. And two, trying to immediately acclimate or, stay awake after traveling Thursday night, stay awake on Friday and go out and try to do football activity to get ready for the game. But I think the most meaningful part of their preparation for this game has been accomplished in Orchard Park through Thursday. Now, I think some finishing touches and then we'll see how it all goes and how these players feel when they're on the field, and if their bodies likely are going to feel like it's 9:30 in the morning Eastern time as opposed to 2:30 in the afternoon in the UK.
You mentioned the sports science, actually interesting. No, that's led by a London native himself who worked for Tottenham Hotspur at one point. That's where the Bills are going to be playing the Jags. But with that sports science, how important is that for the Bills to have kind of all of that together, considering they're playing against a Jags team who plays in London more than anyone else, and they've actually been there throughout the week since they just played the Falcons this past week, also in London.
You've heard Sean McDermott say it. It's got to be an advantage for Jacksonville to have been there, to feel acclimated, all their players. You're going to have a fair amount of Bills players where all of this is going to be new to them, right? Having just traveled there, how many of them have even done that for a vacation or whatever? So it's going to feel new. And then playing a game in an unfamiliar stadium. In many cases, yes, you can play in stadiums in which you've not played in the U.S., but for the most part, players have that basic feel. This is a soccer stadium now turned football for this game. They are going to have to understand the wind patterns and all the different things that go into your stadium scouting. Sean McDermott talked about that. Again, I give the Bills high marks for the detail work that's going to be done. Examining every inch of that field, too, is another thing that I know Sean McDermott places a high priority on and has always done through his career, and learned that from Andy Reid and other more experienced coaches with whom he's worked. So put all that together and you'll have something that, again, probably much more discussion about it once the kickoff happens and the game's rolling along. I think for both teams, it'll just feel like a football game, even though it's on foreign soil.
Let's talk about that football game for a second. Starting with the matchup of the Bills defense against the Jaguars offense, right? This is a Bills defense that is playing as well as anyone in the league, going up against a Jaguars offense that has some talent. Trevor Lawrence considered a bright young quarterback, but it's an offense that struggled. Just 9 points against the Chiefs. They lost by 20 at home to the Texans. Just how do you see this matchup? Is this an opportunity for the Bills defense really to continue being as dominant as they've been the past 3 weeks, even if they don't have Rousseau and Miller and Trey White?
I have every reason to think that the Bills defense will continue its role. Will it be as dominant as it was in some of the other games this year? We'll see, but I think it's going to be pretty good. Yes, there's a shakeup and a change with the Tre'Davious White injury and Greg Rousseau's potential absence can affect things. But I don't see the overall quality of the defense dropping by a lot. And I know that Sean McDermott is still the defensive coordinator, still putting the scheme together and calling those signals. And that's been a big part of that success. I also think they're facing a Jaguars offense that has been so inconsistent. There was a lot of high expectation for Trevor Lawrence this season, for the explosiveness of Doug Peterson's passing game. And we haven't seen that on any consistent basis. Some big plays here and there, but nothing that really makes you say, oh, wow, this is going to be a handful. I think they'll be challenging at times, but I see it, frankly, as an offense that the Bills defense can handle.
And on the flip side, for the Bills, you have an offense that is clicking on all cylinders. Josh Allen, second time in 3 weeks that he's won AFC Offensive Player of the Week. We've seen a high level of play from him in years past, but does it almost seem that in the wake of that Jets game, he's taken his play to another level in terms of kind of showing a little bit more maturity to his game and just kind of playing it all around at the best level we've seen from him?
I don't think there is any question that Jets performance and what has followed really has been transformative for Josh Allen's career. That's not an overstatement. The guy has taken his game to a level that he was always capable of taking it. And what's made it better is a clear understanding that he has about staying within himself, about making the most of what's around him and not putting it all on his shoulder pads, being smart with the football. His completion percentage is just off the hook for a guy who was not only thought to be, but was terrible with his accuracy coming out of college and had slow growth in that area. And then, of course, questions were coming around again about his so-called long ball accuracy issues. But we see a guy now who has complete control of the game, whether he's throwing short, intermediate, or long, picking his spots, feeling what the defense is doing so well, and leaning on a running game. And this goes in concert with Ken Dorsey's play calling too. But the message got through to Josh, and maybe no one had to say a thing to him. Maybe he just had to either take his own mind's video from that Jets game and live that nightmare enough to say, I don't ever want to see myself do that again, or in watching that again and going over it, realizing these are all the things I can't do. This isn't me. And it was so unusually bad for a Josh Allen to play that way. Now the conversation, rightfully so, is about this guy being the leading candidate to be MVP of the NFL. And he is playing right up there with the best of the league, which is Patrick Mahomes, generally speaking, and go down the list of other quarterbacks who are considered playing very well. But honestly, I think it's Josh Allen, I think it's Patrick Mahomes, and then I think it's maybe a cluster of other players.
He's going up against a Jags defense that also features Josh Allen, the pass rusher. He had a pretty good game against the Bills the last time they played 2 years ago. But other than that, the Jags defense this year, they've given up some big plays down the field and going back and watching some of their games. And you mentioned kind of Ken Dorsey and his play calling. Just let's give him his flowers for a second, and just how does he kind of continue that success with play calling against the Jaguars defense that has shown that they can give up some big plays?
Well, I think you look like a much smarter play caller, a much better quarterback, much better running back when you have an offensive line playing as well as the Bills' O-line is playing too. I think that is maybe the underappreciated element of this team's success so far, and the idea that they can go so much further with what they're doing. This O-line has played exceptionally well. They are pass protecting as well as I've seen maybe at any time since Allen's time as quarterback. I think they are opening holes for the run. Watching Osiris Torrance just dominate and blow people off the ball consistently is a thing of beauty. He may be as good a rookie offensive lineman as we've seen in quite a bit, playing that guard position. And then it's the flow from that. It's the trust that this line will do its job. So Ken Dorsey can call plays accordingly. Josh Allen can execute or adjust accordingly.
Osiris Torrance, a Florida Gator. I don't mention that for no reason. Vic, I want to end with this question. You've covered the league for a while, even before they were playing these London games. Just in your time being around the NFL, and they've started playing these games in London and Mexico and now Germany also this year, just how have you seen the league expand, and what do you think these games do for the popularity of the NFL worldwide?
The one constant in my many years, and we are probably fast approaching, I think, 50 of covering this league.
Big milestone.
It's a big milestone. That I know this about the brand, the NFL brand. They know how to make money. They are wizards at finding revenue streams. And you go back to, as you said, I hadn't covered a regular season game there, but I did cover preseason games there and heard the conversation then about global expansion. I covered one in Mexico City, and when that stadium Azteca was filled with 100,000 or so people for a preseason game, I said, okay, yeah. And more importantly, the suits of the league said, we could probably do something with this. And as time has gone on, and as more people and resources have been put into the think tank, and then operations literally being set up in Europe by the league offices to manage all of this, you could see how global expansion has been on the horizon. Again, a league that found a way to make great additional revenue through fantasy football, something it encouraged and something it does with its own website, and then partnering with so many others, and then gambling and the legalization of gambling, of course, having government assistance there with the laws that have opened the doors to that. That has been obviously a huge revenue stream that's only getting bigger. But global expansion, seeing the opportunity to play games in Europe, play games in Mexico, and we'll see them. They've played preseason games before in Japan. You're looking at a league that is constantly seeing the globe and seeing its reach, and knowing there are more dollars to be had out there than what they already have. And some people may stop and say, well, wait a minute, these are billionaires who own these teams, and they're making all this money from television revenue in the US. What's the need to go out of the US to make more money? Well, these people who run teams didn't get to be billionaires by saying, yeah, we've got enough. They don't say that.
The Bills on a roll here in the States. They're going to look to continue that across the pond over at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in North London. Kickoff against the Jags set for 9:30. Vic, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to talking to you to look back at everything that happened in this game next week.
Always a pleasure, Jonathan.